Welcome back to Contemporary Black Voices, where we have a very special guest, student minister Muhammad, and he was talking about the Million Man March, and we were asking about the diversity, uh, if the nation really should diversify, and the minister was saying that to do that, he wouldn't be able to explain the Million Man March. So continue.
Right. If we weren't diversified, we wouldn't be able to explain the Million Man March. The people that were there, 95% of the men that were on that mall were Christian, right? We had the Bloods, we had the Crips, we had the Gangster Disciples, we had the Latin Kings, we had the East Coast, West Coast, North, South, we had rural, we had city. So we could not have gathered that kind of nearly 2 million men on that mall, right? Peaceful, no arrests, no fights, unless there was a diversification of our outreach. What happens is that when they saw the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a man that they could not corrupt, a man that they could not scare, a man that they could not frighten, and they saw those men responding to that, then they went to action. They went to action about that to isolate us. See, the attacks on Minister Farrakhan have been nonstop since 1984, when they falsely accused him of anti-Semitism, of being misogynist, of being homophobic. All of these names and labels, these cancel names they put out there to try to isolate him. But in attacking him, they only made him more popular with our people. So they decided to change their strategy and say, and pretend like we can't hear from him, banned from social media and all of that. So he would be out of sight and out of mind. But I go back to the point that I was making as I referred to Sister Dr. Sharon, is that more women spoke at the Million Man March than did the March on Washington under Dr. King in 1963. We had a larger crowd. The mall was cleaner, according to Sam Jordan, who was a special assistant to Mayor Barry at that time. He said in the follow-up meeting, the mall was cleaner when we left than when we found it. So here you have something where you bring in, and then you look at the Parks Department lied and said there was only 400,000 there, but we got the satellite imagery and proved that there were nearly 2 million men on that mall. So what we have to do is understand is that if we don't tell our story, if we don't dictate our history, then these myths and misnomers will take place. The great Bishop Brookins came to Minister Farrakhan before. He said, Farrakhan, you got all these men out here. What are you going to tell them? Are you going to invite them to Islam? This is diversity. He said, no, Bishop Brookins. I'm going to tell them to go to a house of worship of your choice. Right. I'm going to tell you to join the organization. I'm going to tell you to adopt black children. I'm going to tell you to pool your resources. I'm going to tell you to register to vote, which we did. The New York Times reported that Bill Clinton owes us to his reelection because 1 million more black men, I don't know where that came from, that million came from, 1 million more black men voted in 1996 than they did in the previous election. So this is very important that we understand the Nation of Islam. And let me make this point as we go to Sister Dr. Sharon, beloved Brother Chris, is that the Million Man March would not have taken place had it not been for the sisters putting us on the bus, raising the money, and backing us and in fact staying home that day with the children to watch us on that mall.
Brother Muhammad, before we go to Sharon, I want to say, first of all, I was on that mall with my son. I would not have missed it. I believe that those who were not there, black men especially, unfortunately, were on the wrong side of history. I think it was very important. And I want to come back to that because I think that that's a very good segue into what we were talking about the diversification. But I'll go to Dr. Sharon and talk to her about the women.
So you and I were talking before the show start of all of the misnomers, misinformation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it, about the role of women in the Nation of Islam. So looking at the incoming administration and look like the qualification to be in that administration is you have to be misogynistic, you have to be abusive to women. What can the women of the Nation of Islam, and I know you're not a woman, but somewhere there's some conversation to where there's some messaging that the women can take, send out to black women. How how to take care of themselves, appearance, dress, etc. How do we manage issues of misogyny, etc.?
Well, sister, part of our theology is this. The teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, a nation can rise no higher than this woman. We have a saying in Nation of Islam, there's no such thing as a no good woman. Every no good woman was made no good by no good man. Mm-hmm. The woman is the mother of civilization. Before the woman knows anything about Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, Christ, Republican, Democrat, Independent, East, West, North, South, that baby knows mama. Mama, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, mother, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, is God's agent, is in the place of God, because the child doesn't know anything about God, but that child knows mother. Wow. So it's very important because she's the shaper and molder of our future. So to disrespect a woman is to disrespect your future. So this is why, in a sense, it feels as if our sisters are walking behind us, but in truth, they're walking beside us. Because our teaching, our theology is that after God's self-creation, his first act of creation was not sun, moon, and stars, or the earth, or the planets. His first act of creation was woman. From himself, he brought forth the best of himself, which is the woman. And so every person that's come on this planet in this world, it can be Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan, myself, yourself, has to come through the womb of a woman. Our teaching is that your womb is God's laboratory. And what you think here will affect what's happened here. We can give birth to gods with little g's. If you read to your child in the womb, if you put music up to them, if you recited mathematical formulas, you give birth to a mathematical genius. But if you got a foolish woman, you're going to have foolish children. So we must guard and protect our women and give them the freedom to do whatever their God-given ability allows them to do. And when you talked about dress and all of that, I don't want anybody to think that because we ask our sisters or our sisters are required to cover themselves, that somehow that's a lack of freedom. In truth, when you display yourself like that, that in sense is a lack of freedom because you're showing everything. I don't know, I worked in a bank for years, Sister Sharon, and the honest thing is that I don't know any bank that didn't lock up its money at night. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you go to a jewelry store, it's in the display case, but it's locked up. Your best things you always value and you cover and you protect. The woman is worth living and dying and fighting for. And that's my answer to that particular question.
It sounds like there's going to the community at large, or maybe it's how it's being marketed and communicated through the media. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be a disconnect on what you're saying and to what I'm seeing and hearing on YouTube of this disconnect between the black man, black woman. Black woman is no good, black man is no good. So for us to be successful as a community, there's some mental retooling that needs to occur to where this respect, this recognition of the role of the woman in the black community is needed for us to be successful.
Sister, we're not going anywhere without the black woman. And again, do we allow others to write our history or to dictate to us our relationship? There's always a third party. Whenever there's a problem, there's always a third party. I've done marriage counseling now for 37 years. And what I always find out when there's a problem between husband and wife, there's a third party. So I always ask them, who have you been talking to? Mm-hmm. And they usually find out they've been talking to the same people. Or we all have what you call fans, which is short for fanatics, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're having a problem with me. We're a couple. We're an item. You're having a problem with me. You're talking to your homegirls. I'm talking to my homeboys. And then we can never, they're always cheering for us. See, yeah, you're right. She ain't no good. And he mistreat you, girl, and so on and so forth. And what happens is, in the end, we all decide, you know what, baby, we've been together all this time. We might as well reconcile this thing. Then our fans look at them, you must be crazy. You told me all that. See, we had people that's involved. Let's take it to the bigger picture. When you have people who are dictating our folkways, mores, norms, and values, the so-called media, this is why we need this media, where we can have this discussion so that the people can hear me unfiltered and no one trying to define who and what we are. And I can explain the program, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, without having it being filtered by somebody else's point of view.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about that and pick that up right where we left off. Thank you. We'll be right back with Contemporary Black Voices.